Hey everybody, Daniel Ramsey here with MyOutDesk. We're your provider for virtual professionals. If you need help in your business, go to our website, myoutdesk.com. Today, I have the unique pleasure of hanging out with Celeste Johnson, the Applied Companies PEO in Northern Nevada. Now, that is code, for those of you that don't know Northern Nevada, for Reno, Nevada, one of the West Coast hubs for transportation. It's a business mecca. I happen to be a neighbor of yours, Celeste, and I really appreciate you joining us today here on our podcast today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, and maybe you can attest to this, Reno is actually very cool. Sometimes we get thrown under the bus a little bit on late night TV, but it's a great city, I promise.
I do like it, actually. My wife and I, at times, have date nights out there in Reno.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of entertainment, a lot of cool things to do in Reno.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for the shout out. Right
Yeah,
on.
there you go. Well, hey, let's talk about you. I'm excited because today we're going to talk about your PEO business. You've had a unique experience. You are a second generation owner. So we're going to dive deep in that process, what it was like for you. And you're going to give some advice having gone through the fire, right? So I'm excited about that. Yeah, you're and a thriver, right? You've survived and thrived.
So.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm trying. Okay, but before we get going, let's talk about you. Like, how did you get going and get started in the PEO world? Like, what's your story? What's your background? Love to hear it.
Yeah, well, I started out, my background is in HR and cut my teeth in HR in the casino world, actually. So I call it, I refer back to it as combat HR. I mean, it was everything you can imagine thrown at me. And I was like this naive girl from Iowa that went, people do this kind of stuff. I mean, it was a learning opportunity. So
did you have to cut anybody's fingers off or anything working for the casinos and the HR?
No, but I mean, it was really interesting. You know, any kind of business that's a 24-hour house with everything from dishwashers to executives was a true learning experience.
That's awesome. And
so loved HR.
Did you end up running it, or did you end up running it at a casino level, or like how high up?
I think I left at like the supervisor level.
Okay.
And then sort of saw the writing on the wall. The casino industry here in Reno is not what it was 20 years ago. There are way fewer. So I did get out of that and went and worked for the university for a while, which also another learning experience, and taught me that I really did not want to work for a bureaucracy. I like the private sector and I like small business. I mean, you can make a decision one day and execute it by that afternoon. You cannot do that in a big setting like a university, which is fine, just wasn't for me.
There you go. And then how'd you get into the PEO world?
Yeah. So through some networking, I met the owner of the Applied Companies at the time, and he hired me. He needed HR. He was setting up this PEO, which I didn't know what that was. I think he barely knew what that was, but he was in it. And I came in as the HR person and loved it. And that was in 2004.
Okay, so you've been in the industry for almost or more than 16 years. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's got to be a lot of change. What have you seen in the PEO world over the 16-year-old years?
Change. Yeah, well, certainly HR laws change in Nevada, every 2 years. That's our legislative cycle. And in other states, frequently federal level, a lot of changes have come about. ACA was a big one. No one knew how that was going to affect the industry. Ultimately, I think in some ways it benefited. It became such a regulatory burden for companies that it was very nice through the PEO partnership for the PEO to take that on. Another thing that I've really seen morph is, even though, at least in Northern Nevada, we're still doing a fair amount of educating what a PEO is and how that business model works, I am seeing more comfort and more willingness for companies to outsource and partner with other businesses that have their expertise. In 2004, the conversations were a little different than they are today. In 2004, the value prop was, this is how you can save money through a PEO. Now
Got it.
a relationship value prop, and it's how does the relationship make you, business owner, your company more valuable? Initially, also, it was very health insurance driven. That was a big part of the conversation. Now, health insurance, at least in my sales process, is a secondary conversation. And it's not based on that cost savings as much.
That's interesting. What are the main reasons businesses choose to use your services?
It depends how they answer this question. And it's, what is your pain, business owner, or what is it that's keeping you up at night? And it runs a spectrum. Some business owners, they just got that first EEOC claim and they're scared. And they went, crap, I can't defend this. I don't have a handbook. I don't have any files. They're asking to see everything and I don't know what to do. The next business owner might say, you know, work comp's got me really confused. I don't know how to manage that. The next one might say, you know what, I don't want to run payroll. I don't want to file my taxes. I don't want to keep files on site. So there's all these different reasons. It depends.
So Celeste, you're a pain doctor for HR and
Right.
company process. Is that what you're saying? Like whatever your pain is, you're gonna fix it.
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you are in this world where you recently did a transaction. You purchased the company that you now own and you worked for previously, which is interesting because our PEO world is consolidating. Like tons of companies are coming in and buying smaller regional PEOs and then making large national ones out of them.
Right.
And so I want to have you share that experience so that our audience and other PEOs can hear like what that process was like. And then you have a client who went through a transaction. So this is going to be Transaction Celeste, which is going to be cool because that's an exciting conversation.
And I've lived through it. So now when I talk to business owners, I'm like, hey, I get it. I've been there. So the prior owner wanted to retire. And I will say he did a very good job of planning for that retirement 5 years before he ultimately chose to make his exit. And that's important for a whole host of reasons. For one, just psychologically. So you take a business owner that has grown a company, they need to slowly figure out what their purpose is in order for them to walk away successfully. Otherwise, I think it's very common that they can almost sabotage that internal purchase process or any purchase process for that matter. Through the process, I knew I wanted to potentially purchase. And then also the owner was looking at, there were other PEOs that wanted to buy us, acquisition mode, like you talked about. There's private equity and money out there that wanted to buy us. And it really came down to who ultimately was going to have control. So I knew that if private equity money came in, I was no longer going to be able to make decisions based on relationships, or what I thought was in the best interest or serve my personal values. It was going to be, how does this flow through to the financials? And I didn't know if I could sustain that or if I wanted to. Also, our differentiator as a small PEO is different than the big guys. So if we were absorbed by someone else, that's fine. They have a different value prop and a different business model. And again, there's space for all of us. And I know even in Northern Nevada, I've lost some business deals because what that client may have wanted might be offered by a bigger national. That's okay. But our differentiator is we're not necessarily the biggest national with the most plan options or the sexiest platform, but we are very relationship based. And we sell on that, and we are highly customized, where a PEO that's a national point of contact might service 40 or 50 clients. Ours internally service 15. So we do it differently. And I knew in the purchase process, those were some of the things that would have had to change if we didn't do it the way that through an internal purchase.
So did somebody else submit an offer to compete with your offer? Because it
Uh-huh.
sounds like,
Yeah.
and was their offer like, because I've been in a couple of transactions where a third party comes in, makes a crazy
Yes.
offer, gets
Uh-huh.
gets a hold of the financials and all the
Yep.
information, and then whacks that offer by
Exactly.
half.
Yep. You nailed it. There was one particular offer that was way higher than any of the others. It would have been an asset purchase versus a stock purchase. And that was prior to any due diligence. And
Right.
fortunately, the owners were smart enough to understand that that offer probably was not going to be how it would have ended up at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would, as the owner, I would have countered. I'm like, if we close in 30 days and it's all cash, I'm in.
Right, sure, exactly. And of course, the offer was not written that way.
Right.
So yeah, that's exactly what happened, but that wasn't really the reality. And then the owner that was retiring was not purely money driven. He wanted a fair amount, but he also very much cared about the clients and the continuity of that and the internal people that are here and what was going to happen to them. And all of that factored into his decision making. And he was loyal to me too, and also wanted to help me pursue my next dream, which was purchasing.
What is how is the staff, how have you transitioned the staff? Because this guy was the owner and now you are. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
That shift can be nerve-wracking for employees. Like they just, well, uncertainty scares people. How did you transition that in that space?
Yeah, it goes back to that sort of 5-year plan that he had. And what he did is he actually started working a lot less. And promoted me to chief operating officer a couple of years before he decided to fully retire. And he got down to 4 days a week and then 3 days a week. And then pretty soon he wasn't in any sales call. And that was part of the plan design too, is have him completely removed from the sales process.
Right.
Because we also needed to prove that the company could stand alone without him. That also increase the value. So we got him out of all of the processes and purely like the last year, really just almost advisory role. He really wasn't doing anything operational anymore.
That's interesting. What would have happened? And I, this is a funny question and I like funny questions, but what would have happened had some third party purchased the company? Would you still be there?
It's hard to say. It probably depended a little bit who it was. I will tell you there was another PEO that was looking at a purchase. I was interested in them and I felt like they had a good model and they had a good organization, a good culture. But outside of them, I didn't see anybody. We talked to probably 3 or 4 private equity firms and, they all wanted to retain me, of course, and the staff, because they knew retention in a relationship-based service business is, it would have devalued it greatly had we all left. So they were very interested in our retention. But it's that, it goes back to that kind of relationship thing. And if it doesn't feel good, I don't know, I probably wouldn't have stayed.
I love it.
I don't know what I would have done though. Once you move up to a certain level and you have such a input in the direction and the control, probably would have started my own.
Yeah. What was what's been the biggest oh crap for you now that you are the owner and CEO? Because there's when you sit in the leadership box but not the owner's box, stuff changes, right? It's totally. Like a different world. So what's been the biggest oh crap, I wasn't ready for this?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. As the chief operating officer, I was involved in the financials from the P&L standpoint, but not from the cash flow. And the company also, because it was many, many years of built up cash reserves, I didn't know to watch that so closely. And I had to, so 2 things had to happen. I had to start looking at, or wanting to start looking at cash flow. I now do that on a weekly basis. Every Monday morning, I get a cash flow report, and I know the cash pretty close to the penny. That was not something I did as a chief operating officer. And the other thing is, all through the purchase, because it was an internal purchase, I kept thinking through that process that, oh, this company's been here for 15 years. I actually have done better once I adjusted my thinking to, I'm a startup, and I started to think of it as a new company, new ownership, new processes. Even though the name is the same, the staff is the same, the clients are the same, I had to switch my thinking. Those were the two big lessons I learned.
That's so cool.
Quickly.
Okay. Yeah, it's quickly because you had to.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yep.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's go through your eye doctor examples. I guess one of your clients actually also went through a purchase. So what was that like?
Yeah, so this is so interesting. The economy has been great for the last couple of years. And one of the things I didn't really think about in the PEO model, and then I have other lines of business too that we talked a little bit about. In a good economy, you think all business is great, everything is better. There are some downsides. And one is M&A activity is happening more than it ever did before. So we've actually lost a couple of clients in the last couple of years because it's such a great time to sell a small business.
Yes.
One in particular, though, has been kind of fun because we didn't lose them. We retained them through their acquisition, but this is the eye doctor I was telling you about. Great practice. It's owned by a couple of eye doctors actually, and then they have a few more on staff. And so they're about 40 employees total for a few locations, and they decided to sell. Owner is, 65, wanting that liquidity event. And what was so exciting about their acquisition is the purchasing entity came in and said, we love that they're in a PEO relationship. We don't have to do all this HR due diligence. You just made our lives a whole lot easier. There's processes in place. There's a handbook. There's a PTO policy. They actually live up to it. All the payroll records are there. So it made their company more valuable, which is super exciting to see. And we retain them. Now that doesn't always happen, but we were glad that we got to see it happen that way.
What advice would you give to other PEOs that are having churn in their client base because of M&A? Like having gone through a couple yourself in the last year or two.
The advice is figure out who those M&A people are and try and get in front of them and give your narrative of why PEO is so fantastic. I recently hired a new operations controller, and she came from the corporate world, and it was from gaming. And she said in her corporate career, her company bought and sold many little businesses. And she said, never once did we sit at a table and even talk about PEO. And how that could have actually benefited in some of their corporate structures that they were doing, because what a great way to buy maybe a small piece and allow it to operate independently from what's happening at the corporate level. They just went through normal, roll up everybody into the big corporate structure. So there's an education out there, right? Even though our industry is getting bigger and we love seeing that, there's still a lot of decision makers out there that have never considered or heard of a PEO model. So, and I'm giving the advice to myself too. This is on my to-do list, is figure out who are those M&A people, how do we get in front of them, how do we talk to them about this great model and how it's going to make them more money. Because at the end of the day, the question is always, what's in it for me, right? So whoever you're talking to, they want to know what's in it for me. There's a lot in it for them. It's just, we gotta get in front of them.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay. You were going to also give something away, and I think this is the time. I think it's a really cool little offer. So let's talk about some of the services that you provide, and then your free offer for the audience.
Yep. Yeah. So PEO services, we do so many great things, and it's hard to list them all in just a quick soundbite. It's sort of all things HR. But some of the top headliners that seem to me to get the most value from the audience are things like handbooks, job descriptions, wage surveys, performance review system. So with that said, we would love to offer, we do this in our community, we offer a review of a handbook.
Yep.
And so today I'll offer 25% off the cost of that review to make sure it's legally compliant. And a handbook is a tool for your staff too. It drives your culture, it helps set your policies. And so you really want to spend some time on that and
Right.
make sure it's putting forth the vision and the mission that you want as a business. And a lot of business owners, I understand, rightly so, it sits on a shelf out there, right, and collects dust, and it hasn't been looked at for 5 years. And what they're doing in actual day-to-day is different than what's even written in it. So always good to spend a little bit of time, throw a little bit of money at it, but I would love to offer that discount.
Okay, so somebody needs to go to your website to actually take advantage of that. So let's share that with the audience.
theappliedcompanies.com. You can go Google search us at The Applied Companies, and then just email us at info@theappliedcompanies.com.
There you go. Well, Celeste Johnson, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fun learning about your journey of purchase and a PEO and all that. We might title this Casino to University to PEO. It was a cool story.
It's been a fun journey for sure. Yeah.
Thanks for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, Daniel.